This is the second quilt in my baby quilt series, Cherries for Brianna. The pattern was again out of the Farm Girl Vintage book by Lori Holt. Her square is called Pie Cherries. One of my favorite parts of making a quilt is choosing the colors. I only need 9. The reds on the left made the cut. Here are my green possibilities and the final cast. Making the cherries. I strip-pieced a white square in the corner of a red square and cut them apart. And then finished adding the white to all 4 corners. Then I trimmed the excess and joined the 2 cherries with another white strip. You can see I pressed the corner seams open, then the joining seam into the centers. Onto the leaves. I do draw a diagonal guideline on the back of my white squares. It helps me be more accurate. And I strip piece the white to each side of the green leaves and trim the corners. And last but not least, the stems. The top stem first. Press to set the stitches. Then I press the seams open. The side stems are probably the fussiest bit of piecing on this block. I lay them out so I know I'm putting the correct pieces together, the angles going the right way. I can strip piece these too. Then snip the excess corners and press open. Sew the side seams together, but with all the diagonal seams on the bias, they get a little wonky. So I did trim them to square them up, and here are the parts for each block. Now I can strip piece the parts together too. After trimming the diagonal stem squares straight, they didn't want to meet at the corners anymore. Grrr! But overall, I was pleased enough with them to continue sewing the blocks together. And here they are. I put a white spacing border around each block. Not only do I like the setting, but then I can trim each of these if needed to make sure they are square and the exact same size. I found this fuchsia batik that I fell in love with. If I'm going to do pink, I'm going to do it all the way. Here is my sashing and border. I added another white border as an accent, kind of like a mat around a framed picture. And here's the quilt top getting laid down on the quilt sandwich. Top, batting, and back. I like to pin baste. My quilting plan was to lay down anchor lines first, going up and down long lines so the quilt won't shift when I free motion later. I used a presser foot with a seam guide down the center, then moved my needle slightly to the right to give me consistent, nice lines. I wanted to show how I managed the quilt bulk. I put up a small folding table to help me support the weight of the quilt. It's not what one would call feng shui, or even that convenient, but I love sewing in my little house, and it works. I used a white-on-white print for the back because I wanted to do more free motion quilting than I thought dotted minky would allow. I really love this quilt, and I was a little scared of ruining it, so I started with the leaves, which felt the easiest to me. Up and down in little straight lines. Don't judge the cherry stems. Next, quilting the cherries themselves. I drew a 1-inch chalk grid and then sewed and sewed and sewed some more. I wiped the chalk lines off and was left with a stitched grid. I went up and down the cherry stems. See, here are a set of corners that aren't so bad. They line up pretty well. I stippled to fill in the white background around the cherries. I was excited to do the borders. First, I practiced loops on a scrap quilt sandwich, then onto my pink sashing. I stumbled onto this Lori Kennedy book about free motion quilting. She suggested using a piece of vinyl and a dry erase marker to try out various stitching patterns. This is also where I got the idea of keeping a scrap quilt sandwich close by to practice on before my beloved quilt. I auditioned a couple of border designs and I boxed the corners off. I'm scared of corners. This is kind of a cringy corner moment, but when my neighbor pointed it out and said it was fun to see a bit of whimsy, I let some of the self-critique go. Okay, now on to my wavy border. Deep breath, and again, These were the auditioning designs for the corners. I liked the flower, and I was pleased with how it turned out. I put a matching fuchsia binding on, and it's done. Baby quilt number 2 of 6 this year. Cheery cherries for Brianna. More free motion than I've ever done before. It's coming. Thank you for watching. Tune in next week for Houses for Alexis. Have a great day.